All right, guys, welcome back here on the Southeastern 14 YouTube channel once again with Brian Edwards as we are going to talk about week one, a full slate for SEC games, some better than others, as we've talked about before. And if you guys are watching this, listening to this, we did talk about the Florida Utah game in a separate video. So if you're watching this after the fact, you don't care. If you're watching this before, then there are some quick tips for betting that Florida Utah game there as well. Brian, quickly, I know we've talked about South Carolina versus North Carolina and LSU versus Florida State in our previous episodes we've done, but just to kind of give people an idea of where you're at here as we are, a couple of days away from the start of these games. Just your overall thoughts on kind of where the line is, what you bet, and whatever else stands out with these two.
Yeah, so we really haven't seen a whole lot of movement. I feel like it's been 2.5 pretty much all of this week. Most books have the total at 64.5. You can get anywhere from like plus 115 to at the most generous plus 125 on the money line for South Carolina. So I like the Gamecocks. I think they're going to win a really close game outright. The news on Juice Wells has been good this week. Sounds like he is all good to go. Whereas he had missed some practices coming into this week for a good, at least about 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks. And then Devontae Walker for North Carolina, who I incorrectly called Watkins a few weeks back. My apologies to
No one would ever spot a mistake. Come on,
right,
please.
right, right, right. Oh, I spotted another one last week. I was talking about a key number being 56, and I go 9 times 7 is 56 rather than 8 times 7. That was great. I was surprised I didn't get that in the comments anywhere. But anywho, I know Mac Brown is still seems optimistic on an appeal, and Walker is going to travel with the team just in case the ruling comes in. But I mean, it seems doubtful that he's going to play, and it's a big deal. I mean, I think it's worth probably at least a point to the spread because I mean he will be there WR1. They also have Nate McCullum, who was Georgia Tech's best wide receiver last year. But the main thing with my handicap here is I just think, well, North Carolina. Um, their defense, they gave up 30.8 points per game last year. Before that, the year before that, 32.1. I mean, they've struggled defensively for 3 years, which I think coincides when Chiswick initially left. Now, he's back now. But anyhow, uh, just major doubts about North Carolina's defense and just kind of that SEC ACC premise of if it's tight line, just go with the SEC. And I mean, look, they beat the mess out of them. Granted, it was 2 years ago in the Mayo Bowl, but at this same venue, and they were 11-point underdogs in that game, and they just jumped all over them early and often. To carry on, Joyner was the MVP of that game. I think he's going to be getting a lot more touches this season, and I just love how Rattler was playing late last year. Although obviously, I love Drake May as well, but I think South Carolina's, assuming Walker doesn't play, I think South Carolina's receivers are a little bit better, and I think their defense should be a little bit better. And their secondary, South Carolina's secondary, I think is really good. They had two true freshmen playing really well for them last year that are now uh, seasoned veterans as true sophomores. So yeah, I'm going Gamecocks there.
Yeah, I think again, seems like a lot of momentum for a lot of people, maybe towards the Gamecocks here, and we'll see what happens. A lot of stuff we talked about on the channel. So if you're a South Carolina fan, check out all the videos we have with Brian. We've done some other stuff as well to get you ready for that game. Any additional thoughts, Brian, on LSU, Florida State? We did talk about that one in depth in another video, but maybe just some closing thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so we definitely know Mason Smith is out, but even when we talked about it 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wasn't positive he was going to be ready from a health standpoint anyway, and he does have that one game suspension. LSU's got a few personnel issues at running back. I know John Emery's out, and I believe Goodwin was doubtful at last look, but they've still got Josh Williams. They've still got Noah Kane. And they've got Logan Diggs. Now, I did see something about him being questionable, but that was earlier in the week. I don't feel like I've seen much more about it. But look, I mean, if they've only got Williams and Kane um, healthy, as long as one of them doesn't get hurt, they'll be good. And they do have two incoming true freshmen, just in terms of other scholarship running backs. But hopefully Diggs will be able to go as well. So I'm not really concerned with some of those injuries. The only personnel issue that I've seen with the Knowles is that projected starting receiver Ja'Kai Douglas is out with an injury. I don't know that that's that big a deal, but I like LSU's roster better. And FSU went 0-3 against the ranked teams they played last year. LSU was not ranked, at least preseason, when they beat them. And yeah, and I just thought FSU was kind of, beating up on some bad teams, like, I mean, some name brands in Florida and Oklahoma, but Florida had five wide receivers out that game and scored 38 points on that defense a week after barely getting on the board until like late fourth quarter at Vandy. And then Oklahoma more than 500 yards of offense, and 32 points in Orlando, where this game is going to be played. And Oklahoma had guys hitting the portal before the bowl game. They had multiple opt outs, including two of their stud offensive linemen and Eric Gray, the former Tennessee running back. So, anyhow, I like the LSU Tigers. I don't think they're going to muff two punts like they did in last year's game. And I think I think at -3 or fewer, will be good to go. Hopefully, you can get a -2.
All right, Brian, we're going to go through some more of these games. And again, if you're looking at the SEC Week 1 slate, it's not the best from top to bottom. There are some of these, again, sort of heavyweight matchups that we've talked about in depth in other episodes and ones we just discussed. But we're going to look at 4 games here that maybe are of interest if you're out there looking to bet, you're looking at different numbers, trends, those kind of things. We'll go just kind of in order of kickoff here, Brian, with some of these. Tennessee, Virginia, that one's going to be played, of course, in Nashville. That's a 12 p.m. Eastern kickoff on Saturday on ABC. The Vols, heavy favorites as you would expect in this one. I think, when we kind of did our preview of the game, I think what stands out with Virginia, a much better defensive team than offensive team in terms of just their expectations coming into the season. And then, of course, for Tennessee, as you and I have discussed over the past couple of weeks, Joe Milton stepping in as quarterback for the Vols. Vols seem to be in a pretty good spot here. I think, at least a 4-touchdown favorite, it seems like in most places. Over under looks like it's around 58, something like that. What are you seeing with the Vols and Cavs in this one?
Yeah. So the Vols, we found some first quarter lines right before we came on the air at DraftKings. My odds feed is not showing any first quarter spreads yet. So I don't know if DraftKings is the only book that has them out right now. But maybe shop around. So I was hoping the Vols would be -7 in the first quarter. I had my doubts, but perhaps an encouraging sign that there's 7.5 at DraftKings, but with a +110 return. So I can't play it at 7.5. I mean, look, they could, you know, get a 3 and out, have a time consuming touchdown drive. Maybe Virginia gets a first down or two, punts, and Tennessee could be driving in the red zone, and just the first quarter runs out. And
Yeah.
to ask, I mean, you're probably, if you don't receive, you're probably getting a maximum of 2 possessions. So it's just tough for me to lay a 7.5 in the first quarter. But because it's 7.5 and plus money, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if other books have a -7. Now it'll probably be juiced to bet Tennessee, probably as much as -140 or -150. But I would not be against that play. I think a push would be your worst case scenario. But here's a couple of other um, the team total on the Vols is 41 and a half. Now, I will say Virginia has 8 starters back on defense, and they were a bad football team last year, but the defense was pretty good. Now, perhaps some of that was teams, maybe hitting the brakes on their offense, just running out the clock because they were ahead by a lot, which very much could have been, the case on some of these games. But they only gave up 24 points per game, and that was with, Brennan Armstrong having a lot of turnovers, and they only averaged 17 points per game. So when an offense only averages 17, if the defense gives up 24, I really think of that as like giving up more, like shave like 3 or 4 points off
Yeah.
that, because the defense is doing its job. So I don't know that I would go over 41 and a half, but if I had to pick it, I'd go over 41 and a half before I'd go under, because I think Tennessee's going to deal one out. Am I laying the 28? No. But the team total is 41 and a half. The number of touchdowns that Tennessee scores, the over under is 5.5. But a minus 105 price if you Vol fans like the over, because the under is minus 135. And, if you think you're going to shut down Virginia's offense, which very well could be the case, I don't really believe in a whole lot Tony Elliott is doing offensively. Virginia's team total is 13 and a half, and their total on touchdowns is 1.5. If any Vol fans maybe wanted to invest in their defense, thinking they would hold the Wahoos to 13 or fewer, or keep them from getting in the end zone a second time, because it's 1.5.
Yeah, I was going to say Virginia's offensive numbers last year, as you said, last in the ACC in scoring, last in time of possession, second to last in turnover margin. And so, yeah, they obviously have to be significantly better there. And the thing is, if you're gonna hang with Tennessee, and if you're gonna even try to pull off a miraculous upset, you have to score points to beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we'll see if Virginia can do that, like you said. So we'll see what happens. All right, another game that kicks off at noon Eastern. That's going to be on the SEC Network. The Devin Leary era officially begins for Kentucky as they're going to host Ball State. And another game that I think a lot of people will have eyes on. We talked about Tennessee. People want to see what Joe Melton looks like. People want to see what Devin Leary looks like for this Kentucky team. Looking around on this one, 26.5. Kentucky, the favorite here in this one. And, I guess, Brian, what are you seeing with this matchup? Because I think there's a lot of, and we said it, like there is a lot of hype around this Kentucky team. And I think a lot of it is warranted in terms of just looking at the roster and seeing all the weapons they have on offense. The defense should be very good. A lot to like about the Cats heading into a game with a Ball State team that could put up some points here, even against a good, I think, Kentucky defense, just given the fact that they've added Lane Hatcher to the mix, a very experienced quarterback, 10,000 passing yards in his career. Plus, they've added a really solid running back to replace Carson Steele, who's now at UCLA, and Marquez Cooper, who comes over from Kent State, ran for at least 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns the past 2 seasons.
Yeah. So, Cooper is really good. Little small guy, but plenty of speed. 5'7", 184, first team All MAC last year. Lane Hatcher has been around Arkansas State. Last year at Texas State, 12 starts, 2,653 passing yards with a 19-10 TDI and T ratio, completed 62% of his passes. So that's an upgrade for Ball State at the quarterback position. I will mention, when I look at MAC teams, Phil Steele's national unit rankings, he goes up to about anywhere from 58 to 65 on most position groups, and not many. Toledo normally gets ranked in like maybe 4 position groups, and maybe some other teams on special teams, but Ball State actually has 2 units that are ranked nationally, not high, but I will just note it. They're ranked 60th at running back, which has to do with Cooper, and their O line is ranked 58th. Their win total is only 4.5. So that shows you the expectations are not that high. Last year they were 5-7 straight up, 6-6 against the spread. They returned 7 starters, on both offense and defense. So 14 overall. They do play at Georgia next week. So this stat, yeah, nice start of the season. Since '98, they've faced 11 SEC teams. They're winless and they're 4-7 against the spread. But now, granted, it was 22 years ago in 2001, but they did cover at Kentucky on a 28-20 loss as an 11 point underdog. They played Tennessee last year, did not cover as a 35.5 point dog, lost 59 to 10, and looks like that's the only FBS team that they played. They added 10 transfers, four that are Power Five. All right, so for Kentucky fans looking for some maybe off the beaten path bets rather than laying the big number, Kentucky is only -7 in the first quarter. I'm not really against that play. I haven't played it. My first quarter lines are not up yet, but if it's getting close to kickoff, and I think I'm going to have that game in my vision, I might would put a little on that. And the team total for Kentucky is 37.5. Which is odds of -115, whether you go over or under. And the total touchdowns, and these are DraftKings, by the way, for Kentucky is 4.5. If you like the over, it's -125 price. You like the under, it is -115. But yeah, I think Devin Leary is going to have a really, really good season. And I think Kentucky will get off to a good start again. I'm not laying the big number. I might take -7 in the first quarter.
All right, here's an interesting one, and not because I think the underdog's going to win, but I have said many times that I think Auburn's the team that I am maybe most intrigued about just to see what they look like in game one because it's a new era under Hugh Freeze, as we know. And they're playing a team that finds itself in a pretty interesting spot in UMass. This game, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. It's on ESPN. UMass, as we talked about, I was on board with Brian last week. I made the bet. I looked at that New Mexico State game. I said, all right, New Mexico State. But boy, UMass goes in, snaps a, what was it, 24 game road losing streak, and they win at New Mexico State 41-30. That was a bit of a wild game there in that one. But now UMass comes in here to play Auburn. Like we said, kicking off a new era. I think there are a lot of questions for Auburn. What are they going to look like early on? How does this team sort of evolve throughout the season? But even with UMass's win, Auburn is a 35-point favorite in a lot of spots here in this game. So what stands out to you, Brian, about this one? Because I don't know why. I just this is very fascinating to me with UMass snapping. I don't think they're going to go in and win this game by any means, but at least there's a little more interest in an FBS versus FBS game here, which there's not a lot of those on the SEC schedule this week.
Yeah, so the opening line for this game was 39.5. I haven't looked at the actually I can just click right here to look at the odds history. Let's see, what was it going into last Saturday? So last Saturday was the 26th, correct? Okay, looks like it had moved all the way up to 41, but then dropped back down to 39. So, with UMass's performance, they dropped it 4 points, because UMass looks like they got a quarterback. Fumachan? I probably butchered that pronunciation. But anyway, used to play at Georgia Tech, had a big game last week, and UMass took my money, darn it. But anyhow, so the odds makers gave them a 4-point upgrade. And like Blake said, most books at 35. Total anywhere I see a few 51s, a few 51.5s, and a few 52s. And DraftKings is offering Auburn in the first quarter at -9.5 and has Auburn's team total at 43.5, -120 if you want the over, -110 to the under, and Auburn's total touchdowns 5.5. But if you like the over, you got to lay a -135 price. And UMass's team total is only 7.5.
Wow.
That seems a little low after they scored 41 last week, but we'll see. So yeah, I got nothing here. I can't even give you. I might play it in the first quarter. I could never lay more than 7 in a first quarter. So I got nothing on this one. But we'll see how Hugh Freeze's team gets going. I think they're going to be better later in the year, and I think that the Iron Bowl could be very, very interesting, as it almost always is when it's on the plains.
Yeah, UMass lost, I guess, the most recent SEC game. They lost that game towards the end of last year in what was just a brutal game to watch against Texas A&M. 20-3 was the
Oh,
final in that one. Towards it was that November, late November last year. So we'll see what happens this year. Again, snapping a 24-game road losing streak. Maybe things kind of come back in the other direction here for an Auburn team that I think will be looking to have something to prove here in week 1 for Hugh Freeze's start. So, all right, let's talk about, you mentioned the Iron Bowl. Let's go to Alabama because they are going to host MTSU, Middle Tennessee, 7:30 p.m. Eastern to kick off there on the SEC Network. The Crimson Tide come in, as we know, with very little rat poison this season. Not a lot to work with for Nick Saban there. But I think we'll know the starting quarterback by the time the game is played. And so it seems like a lot of people really, believing Jalen Milroe is going to be the guy there. And we'll see what the Alabama offense looks like if that is the case. But what stands out for you on this one, Brian, heading into this matchup, Alabama and MTSU? And we've seen Rick Stockstill have some success at MTSU over the years. But this is a pretty big line. I think it's 39 and a half, 39 in a lot of places. So
yeah, 39 at most books. I said DraftKings is 39 and a half. Most books have the total at 50. Alabama in the first quarter is minus 9.5. Their team total is 45.5. If you like the over, minus 105 price. Alabama's total touchdowns is 5.5. But if you like the over, you got to pay a minus 160 price. As for Middle Tennessee, they made their big splash last year going to Miami as a 25.5-point underdog and won 45-31. And Stockstill played college ball at FSU, so he do you remember seeing his comments after that game?
I know you're talking about. I don't remember the exact wording, but I know yeah.
It was great. It was great. I mean, he was just a jerk to the Miami fans in vintage FSU Miami rivalry form. They actually finished last year on a 4-game winning streak and won 5 of 6. They beat San Diego State as a 6.5-point underdog in their bowl game. They also beat FAU as a 6-point underdog, beat UTEP as a 2-point dog. So, and they beat Colorado State as 11.5-point dog. I'm not comparing any of these teams, not even the Miami Hurricanes, to Alabama, but interesting nonetheless that they won. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5 outright wins as an underdog. That's pretty unusual. Don't see that very often. They finish 8-5 straight up. 6-7 against the spread, so they weren't very good as favorites. They got 8 starters back on defense and 5 on offense, but they are replacing their quarterback. Chase Cunningham was a pretty good player. They lost their top 3 receivers. They brought in 9 transfers, 3 from Power 5 programs. Their win total at circa is 6.5, minus 120 to the over. And Phil Steele's national unit rankings have their defensive line number 48, their secondary number 42, and their special teams number 62. So that's just sharing some information. I have no play on this game.
Yeah, MTSU, one of the stats that I look at, you mentioned, DJ England Chisholm, really good, speedy wide receiver they have. We saw him break a big play last year against Miami, and that's how they beat Miami, was the big plays. But I was looking at their stats to preview, that game with Alabama, and the minus 61, 66 rushing yards they had against San Diego State in the Hawaii Bowl game, and they still won the game. Not many times I've seen that
Wow.
before. Of
No.
course, I think they gave up 7 sacks, something like that. But yeah, to have that many negative 61 or 66 rushing yards, you don't see that very often in
No.
win, period, in any game. But all right, Brian, again, that's kind of the SEC slate because some of the other games we said, some of these are not against FBS competition. The other game, I guess we didn't really touch on. I don't really have a lot unless you want to add anything on Texas A&M, New Mexico. I think the Aggies, are a team that should take care of business there in that one. But otherwise, I think again, everyone else. This is where we're recording this early Thursday afternoon, and so I don't think we have all the lines just yet on the non FBS games involving SEC teams. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else on the schedule this week in terms of anything you're really salivating over from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, no, there's really not. I will just let A&M fans know New Mexico went 2-10 straight up last year, 3-8-1. ATS, they only bring back 2 starters on defense, 8 on offense. Their win total at DraftKings is 3.5, shaded to the over. Minus 120. A&M is 5-0 all time against the Lobos. And they actually played in College Station in 2021 and lost 34 to zip. And let's see, as a road underdog under Danny Gonzalez, they are 3-9 against the spread in the first 3 years of his tenure. Now, we're going to talk my other picks, or we're going to.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of lead into it. We mentioned Texas A&M.
Okay.
If you're a Texas A&M fan and you want to know what Brian's got a couple other picks outside the SEC, which we do this every week. Some picks that he finds out there that if you're betting, not just on SEC games, you may find interesting. Miami happens to be one of those picks involved here, which we know the Aggies will see a week from now in week 2 as A&M will head to Miami for that showdown there next Saturday.
Yeah. So Miami of Ohio, either a 16.5 or 17-point underdog at Miami. This one, Friday night. And I'm going to go with Miami of Ohio plus 17. And if your number 16.5, I would buy the half point to the key number of 17. So Miami of Ohio, their star quarterback, Brett Gabbert, he went down with a season-ending injury in week 4 last season, and he had 29. He has 29 career starts and a 45-14 career touchdown to interception ratio. So I mean, he's a really good quarterback. Obviously, we've seen a lot of MAC quarterbacks, make it in the NFL. Roethlisberger certainly comes to mind, and I think Gabbert's older brother is still a backup in the league. But anyhow, he went down in season or week 4, and Miami of Ohio still made a bowl game, and they did it because they had a good defense. Their offense, it wasn't the offense. Once Gabbert was out, the offense was garbage and actually ended up only averaging 20.2 points per game. But kind of like we were talking about a minute ago, when your offense is so bad, I think you can, subtract some stats from your, defense's scoring average. But they only gave up 22.6 last year, and they got 9 starters back on that side of the ball. They've got their star quarterback back as well. And they went 5 or 6-7 last year, but 4 of the losses were by 6 points or fewer. And they played at Kentucky last year. They played Cincinnati as well. So it's not like they aren't accustomed to going, up against big teams. But it's not like the Canes are going to have some huge crowd tomorrow night. They only get big crowds for like ranked teams or FSU. One little stat as well: Red Hawks 7-4 against the spread with 4 outright wins their last 11 games as underdogs. Now, Cristobal has said Tyler Van Dyke is good to go, but he did injure his thumb, hit it on a helmet 2 Tuesdays ago. So, 9 days ago, I guess, and missed a lot of practice the rest of last week. Whether Cristobal is playing coy or not, he says he's good to go. We'll see. But, regardless, Miami was not very good last year. 5-7 straight up, an abysmal 2-10 against the spread. And they were favorites at home in games they got blown out. 25.5 point favorite to Middle Tennessee, lost 45-31. 9 point favorite to Duke, lost 45-21. 6.5 point favorite to Pitt. When Pitt had a lot of injuries there late in the year, and Pitt, and I might have even been on a third string quarterback in that game. I know Slovis was definitely out, but anyway, Pitt won 42-16. And they lost to North Carolina at home. So there's 5 games they lost at home outright last year. So until Miami shows me a little something, I'll take a team that I think has even though it's a G5 team, I think they've got a quality quarterback, and I think they've got a solid defense. And so I'll go Miami of Ohio plus the 17.
And the other one you've got Utah State heads to Iowa for an 11 a.m. Central kickoff on Saturday as well. I know that's one that has your interest also in that one.
Yeah, more than anything, I'm going against the Hawkeyes here. So, Ferentz said they feel pretty good about McNamara playing, and he should be a very significant, upgrade from Spencer Petras. But whether he plays or not, he hadn't been practicing for what I want to say it's been like 3 weeks. I mean,
Been a
what that
while, yeah.
yeah, I mean, that injury was early in August. So, he has not been getting the practice time in. But, the main reasons that I'm playing this, first off, okay, I was laying 24 points. That's the most they've laid in a game since their 2016
Wow.
season opener. Okay. In their last 22 games, they've won by 24 or more once. Okay. And they played South Dakota State last year, and they played Nevada last year. Nevada. Actually, that is the game that they've won. They won 27-0. That's the game that they've won by more than 24. So, yeah, not many blowouts from the Hawkeyes here lately, and they're 4-8 against the spread their last 12 as a double-digit favorite, and one of their better receivers, Nico Raggiani, 34 catches, 386 yards, 1 touchdown. Those are monster stats in Iowa's offense, by the way. He
Yeah.
is questionable. Their stud defensive tackle, Noah Shannon, has been, and now he had 44 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 3 QB hurries last year. He's been suspended for the entire season for sports gambling. Now they are appealing that and think they're going to get it reduced, but I very seriously doubt that they would get it, reduced for Saturday. That it would get reduced from the whole season to nothing. So he's out, and they're supposedly going to have 4 other players suspended for sports betting stuff. I think one of them is, I believe his name is Jack Johnson, and he didn't have any significant stats last year. So the other guys might not be that significant. Look, Utah State, I'm not that high on them, but I do like their coach, Blake Anderson. 2 years ago, he won the Mountain West, and went 11-3. And last year, they didn't have a great year, but they did get back to a bowl game. And under Anderson, they have gone on the road and won. Not that I'm expecting them to win outright, but they did win outright at Washington State as a 17.5 point underdog in the season opener 2 years ago. So I just don't think Iowa's going to be very prolific offensively. So give me the Utah State Aggies plus 24.
There you go. There are Brian's picks for week one. Like we said, a lot of interesting SEC matchups, some not so interesting, but a couple outside as well if you're looking to bet on some games here in week one. But Brian, anything else we want to get to before we wrap up here? Should be a fun one finally here, week one. No, I know we had week 0, but this is a lot more exciting, I think, heading into this.
Yeah, just no. Enjoyed chatting with you, Blake. I guess the last thing I would actually throw out is that especially in games like this where I don't really like a pregame bet, if a lot of these big favorites, if any of them were to like fall behind, Like I remember South Alabama. Didn't they jump all over UCLA in week 1 last year? And sometimes you'll get a heavy favorite and a live line will be like 15 points different. So if you want to
Yeah.
follow me on Twitter at Vegas B Edwards, I usually tweet out whatever live bets I make. And because I don't have many game, and really the LSU bet is the only one that I've got like aggressively bet. I got a pretty decent amount on South Carolina. I'm probably going to be looking to do a lot of live bets if good opportunities present themselves. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I might have some more opinions there. And normally each week I'll have a lot more plays, just so many mismatches.
Yeah.
If I'm not interested in the underdog, I'm not really laying more than 20 points or even more than 14 or 17 that often. So that's why I've got a small amount of plays this week.
Yep. Check them all out. Like he said, follow him on Twitter at Vegas B Edwards. You can find the other stuff, as we mentioned, Major Wager as well. So check all that out for Brian's stuff. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We do this every week. And now that the games are here, we'll have a lot more nuggets of information for you guys each and every week here as we talk to Brian on Southeastern 14. So hit that subscribe button. And we appreciate you watching here on the channel. If you want to listen to this in its entirety, find our podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for Southeastern 14. You can listen to it there. But again, appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.